Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Anthony Franco. You were looking spry. You're looking well.
You know, I was thinking right now how much I am starting to enjoy our intro music just because I have so much fun on this podcast with you that I'm like, it's like starting to be like what's that thing with mouse you do with mice?
Well, you're having a Pavlovian response.
Pavlovian,
right?
yeah.
It's like you're drooling
I'm enjoying
when I ring the bell.
Or either that, or maybe you smell like cheese. I don't know which one is true.
I was going to suggest that maybe the next step is to see if we can make you drool on the podcast. We were talking about this briefly off air, Anthony. It is some good kind of exciting music. You know, it's kind of got a vibe. Do you ever find yourself just kind of, getting a little dance?
Just like
going?
doing an old white guy dance move. Yeah, I find myself doing that.
Will we ever, for just a mere second as we go live, catch you just kind of getting a little jiggy with it?
We're a ways away.
Again, questioning here who is the lead and who's wearing the dress.
We're just here for ourselves, everybody. Sorry about
pretty much it. Anthony, it is a special episode because we don't have a guest, and we decided after many guests in a row that we just wanted to get back to the true heart of this show, which is absolutely sitting here and making fun of each other for an hour, which is really, I think, the best part of the show. But before we start, Anthony, I want to tell you a story. In 1981, the mainframe computer industry was caught completely off guard by a seemingly harmless toy, the personal computer. Well, giants like IBM and DEC obsessed over each other's moves. They initially ignored a little company called Apple. I'm not familiar with that. I think that's the people that did I think they published records for the Beatles.
For the Beatles.
Yeah. And other PC makers. It wasn't until 40% of their core business users started bringing PCs to work that they realized they had been watching the wrong competitor signals. Today, Anthony, on How to Founder, we're talking about when competition actually matters. I am Chris Franks. With me today is the bespectacled. Those are some good glasses, actually. I was going to try to make fun of the glasses. Those are, mildly hip.
I'm embarrassed to say this. I have probably 14 different pair of glasses that I go through just for vanity's sake on this podcast. Like it doesn't do much for my face, but at least
it's like the single. Well, so for me, the glasses is the single accessory. Like I'm not going to be doing hair products, right?
Yeah, and you change your glasses out all the time.
Oh, all the time. And because they're just reading glasses, but I need reading glasses is the stage of my life. So really joining me today is the 126-year-old Anthony Franco. Anthony, thank you for making it out of bed this morning.
Thank you for having me, Chris.
Yeah. And I know you got to get to dinner and bed again soon. So we'll try to be brief on the episode.
I'm already 4 hours into my day.
That's exactly right. So, Anthony, let's just start from the very beginning here. Let's just talk about, what is this thing called competition? This is something, it's a fascinating conversation because I see a lot of people, early stage founders, obsess about competition matrix. And then they're actually not even competing in that industry. And so how do I need to start thinking about this concept of competition as a startup? Do I even worry about it? Or do I just go build a product? What do you think?
I have so many stories on this. So, let me tell a little story on competition. So,
all right. Well, be careful because I don't want you to strain yourself, Grandpa. Yeah. You're creaming. Go ahead. Sorry, I was carrying the joke on. Continue.
I totally lost my train of thought. I have no idea what I was about to say, Chris.
Where am I? I don't even. What's going on here?
That wasn't in the notes. No, competition. The story. So I was at a trade show with one of my companies, and our competitors were there. And to be really frank, we never really thought about our competition that much. We just thought about serving our customers and how to improve ourselves, which I think we had kind of a blind spot to our competition in what they were saying and what they were saying about us. But again, we were more focused on customers and serving customers. And I ran into the CEO, me and one of my employees, really good guy. His name is Sean Christman. He'll remember this story. We're standing there in this, talking to one of our competitors' CEO, and we were, there was some tension, more from him than us. Like, we were just like, "Hey, good to see you. You guys are doing good work." Blah blah blah, and he said, next. The next trade show that we're at, we're going to have one of those blow up boxing rings in our booth. And I'm like, that sounds kind of cool. You're going to get a lot of traffic. And he points at Sean and he says, and you and me are going to get in the ring. And Sean is the most affable, likable individual on the face of the planet. I can't think of one negative thing to say about Sean. And Sean was like, "Oh," he was like, "Okay, yeah, fine." I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was like, "Okay, fine, but it's not really my thing. I'm not I don't think I'm much of a boxer." And the CEO stared Sean directly in the face and said, "No, I just want a chance to punch you directly in your face."
All right.
And me and Sean were like, "Whoa, I guess this company really hate." They were so focused on us, calling us slurs and their customers, and making jokes internally. Apparently one of their employees told us that they brought us up in every staff meeting, and it's like, what are you doing? Why are you so focused on your competition? There's so much room in the market for both of us that you're missing out because you're focused on us and not focused on the smart things. Anyway, so long story short, or long story long, focusing on your competition could become an obsession to a point where you actually do your own company harm.
I nodded off 5 minutes ago. I have at no point during that rambling diatribe did you ever arrive at anything that closely resembled. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul. Little Billy Madison quote for everybody for this morning. It's a really interesting point, Anthony, because I do think that there is this concept about being sort of obsessive about your competition. And I think it happens most of the time when you're in a very mature industry and there is somebody, like you're chasing somebody or somebody's chasing you, and you have to be very aware of the tactics and the moves that they're making. But startups ain't that. Early stage companies, almost by definition, do you have competition? Is it a thing?
Yeah, I wonder about that all the time too. And there's a difference between, so where that CEO failed is there's a difference between competition and having an enemy. And having an enemy can be very powerful and motivating. Steve Jobs famously had a picture of Michael Dell on it, and I think he was throwing darts at it in his office. So having an enemy is, Chris, you know who our sworn enemy is of the How to Founder podcast?
Absolutely. It's Peter Thiel.
Thiel.
Right. Yeah, Peter, call me.
So having an enemy is powerful. It's powerfully motivating. But having, how did you do that?
I'm on my iPad, so
that's very good. But making your competition enemy can be a really bad look. So, or trying to find startups. You're right. Startups don't have necessarily competition, but they look for it. They look like, all right, who are we competing against? It's like, no, just go solve your customer's problem. That's enough for you to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, for every startup, the problem should be the thing you're obsessed with. And solving that on behalf of your customer should be the thing that you're obsessed with. It should not be.
Or your customer, figuring out what your customer's problem is, now, and then solving that. Yeah.
I do love the idea, and this is in the world of logic and philosophy. They call this the straw man argument, which is creating something of which we all pay attention to and just say, this is, and like get you fired up, right? And so having a straw man is kind of an interesting thought, but even that, like maybe it's a short-term motivation. I don't know that you really want angry employees. You want employees that are really focused on solving the problem that you're trying to solve, I think.
I mean, Chris, you've run a couple companies.
No, I'm just a good-looking host.
Were your weekly or monthly conversations with your team about looking at competition, being obsessed with competition, or was it about your customers? Like, what's a more healthy outlook?
It never, and I never even I knew, and when I was doing my last company, I was effectively competing with thousands of other companies, including thousands of people that are contractors and Upwork and things like that. When you're in the space of growth marketing, you're having to convince people that your approach to building a website or launching an ad campaign or whatever else is better than they can find vastly cheaper other places. But the reality is that we just had more stuff to do ourselves. We had to get better. We had to get smarter. We had to get more efficient. We had to do a better job for our customers. And I just never really paid attention to them. And there was so much market space. There's so much space in the market. Like, who really cares?
And that's really kind of the truth for services organizations, right? But when you're in product, it is slightly different and could be dramatically different.
Here's the question I want to ask, because there is cases, and I've seen this, where and I'll use Google's changing the algorithm for on SEO, right? Because back in the day, there was this thing called gray hat or black hat SEO, and you could sort of hack Google. And there was a huge industry that emerged, like billion-dollar industry that emerged around helping people get to the first page of Google. And one keystroke, they changed the algorithm and it went away. In that case, there are these big behemoths where you come in and you figure out this little niche. And if you can do this one thing, and your competition are the big guys that can just sort of snap, and suddenly the thing that you're trying to do is under their umbrella. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, how many startups has OpenAI put out of business in the last 2 years just because they added a feature to OpenAI, right? So that's a whole nother conversation. Is your business a feature or a product? Like that's a conversation that I probably need to add to the list of things that we need to talk about.
We do.
But that's not what I was talking about.
That's the thing. Yeah. Like, that's a VC thing, right? VCs will be like, "Let's feature, not a product." Like,
it's a feature, not a product. What I'm more talking about, what I'm curious about, Chris, is wow, that was really loud. I don't know.
Wow! I just flipped my coffee cup.
That was extremely jarring.
Yeah. Here's what I'll do for you, Anthony. See if I can make it the emojis.
Oh, jeez. Don't do that. That's awkward.
That was awkward.
So the thing that I'm talking about is, so the contrarian point of view on not looking at your competition is competition that you don't even know exists, right? So yeah, you can have your own niche and space, but like the classic examples that we talk about all the time. Blockbuster didn't even think that Netflix was competition. They thought they would never compete with Netflix. And so it's this weird. I want you to talk a little bit about, Chris. I want you to help me unpack this, because there's this point where you shouldn't be obsessed with competition, But you should be obsessed with the market changes that are happening because of new emergent companies coming into your space that will disrupt it. So how do you tear that apart?
Well, I think that there's two aspects to what you just said. And the first one I think is super interesting because it really is almost one of the places why startups exist. And this first one is, let's say there's emerging technology. And I'm just going to make an example right now, since I teach, I'll say education and AI, right? And there are people that sell into education, like we'll say textbooks, right? So Pearson and these companies are gigantic. They're huge. $100 million, huge valuations, been around forever. One of the first things is to understand that they're slow and they're gonna be slow to react to the changes in the marketplace. And so, AI is the current one that we talk about all the time, but these changes, they occur all the time. Even before AI, everybody between the ages of 18 to 25 is watching short form video right now. Why isn't Pearson creating short form video content for educational purposes? Why? Because they can't. They're huge. To get them to change to do that would take freaking forever. And so just the idea that somebody's way out in front in your market, that's not bad. As a matter of fact, it's good. Now, could they pivot into your space? Yes, but remember, big companies, they take a long time to enter a space and add a feature, things like that. So the first idea is, yes, mapping out where the market leaders in your space are, but don't be scared of the fact that they're market leaders, because they're battleships, right? They're aircraft carriers. The idea of them tacking or moving it just happens slowly. Agree or disagree with that?
I totally agree with it. And I actually think the times that we're living in right now, Chris, are going to change the dynamic of what competition means. So let's look at Pearson for a second. So should you as a startup be worried about Pearson, or should Pearson be worried about you as a startup? I actually think, because of where we're living right now, I think Pearson's in tremendous jeopardy.
Right.
Anybody producing textbooks right now should be worried sick about what AI is going to do to them.
Yeah.
And so that goes back to, not worrying about a single competitor, but more about what is coming. What is the existential threat to your business, to your industry, and textbooks? Like, if they're not adopting an AI first attitude, they're dead in less than 5 years. You can't. My kids could, and my wife and I are actually looking at this just to go down this education rabbit hole. We're looking at using an AI tutor for our kids and homeschooling them with that. We're seeing results out of homeschoolers using AI first, no textbooks, just having an AI teach their kids for an hour and a half a day, that are crushing standardized testing. They're crushing knowledge, because one, it's engaging; two, it's personalized, and three, it's one-on-one. It's a little weird to say it's one-on-one. But it is. It's one-on-one. And so we're looking at that. So Pearson should be looking at this and going, oh my gosh, competition isn't who we think it is. It's not the other publisher. It's this whole new emerging technology that's going to crush us.
I think it's just along those analogies, and I can come up with 5 more, just being loosely associated with education, right? Like, that is a use case where traditional education, and maybe even like K through 12 education, should be concerned. Like, this is an existential threat. I think that the advice that I would give founders in this environment is to be aware and to create an industry map, understand what's happening. And the beautiful thing is, with publicly traded companies, they're not going to tell you everything, but they have to tell you a lot. They've got to give you quarterly results and tell you what's going on. And so they have to publish that stuff. So go look up their quarterly results, look what's happening, look if they're laying people off, whatever, and just keep an eye of the market as a whole. But Anthony, it's fundamentally different, which is market understanding versus individual obsession with competitors.
I agree.
I'm not sure, since I'm on my iPad. There he goes. Zach asks, talk about stagnant industries ripe for disruption. It'll be interesting to see the spoke education evolves. Yeah, it is true, Zach. And I think that's one of the things that is really interesting, which is I'm doing a strategy class right now. And we talk about what kind of industry do you want to operate in? Do you want to go into one where there's 50 other, let's say ed tech startups, or do you want to find a space where nobody's playing in? Like, one of the great things, our friend John Rossi, Anthony, he started a tech company within the Caterpillar, like heavy equipment manufacturing space. It's like, yeah, there's no other competition doing that stuff. Yeah, it's interesting. All right. So give me an idea about when and what competition as a founder. So if industry is one thing, but do I actually need to pay attention to anybody that's another startup? Should I be at least keeping them in my peripheral vision as I'm trying to go out and solve a problem?
I think this comes down to fundamentals. And I was thinking about this morning, Chris. We always wind up in every episode. This is episode 72 now, right?
726, I think. No, okay.
Yeah, we come down to these truisms for every company. One is really understand your customer. And if you're better at understanding your customer and your customer's pain, then you're going to be better at providing them a product that's going to solve it. So when you're looking at your competition, all you're seeing is the output from the work that they're doing on understanding their customer. You're just seeing the front curtains, right? You're not seeing all the sausage being made in the background. So I would say a great way to understand to compete is to understand your customers better and serve your customers better than anybody else. And not do a feature for feature mapping on, well, they have this feature and we have that and we don't. Go to understanding what issue you're trying to solve for your customers, and then solve that issue, solve that fundamental pain. And if you're competing in an environment that somebody has a feature matrix and they're saying, well, they have this feature and you don't have that feature, that's a commodity buy. And features are important, but your job in that sales process is to underscore for the person buying what problem are you trying to solve? Why does this feature matter? And just show that you care about solving the problem for them, not beating your competition on features.
It's funny, what you're saying strikes me is that the reality is that founders of early stage companies don't really need to be too worried about competition, because there's so many other market forces and so much other stuff that you got to worry about. Like, don't stay up, don't wake up at 2 a.m. about like what the big incumbent competitor in your market is doing. They do need to be worried about you.
I think so.
Yeah. So my question to you is, and you've scaled companies, when do you start looking in the rearview mirror? When do you start saying like, oh, I got to look behind me because now I have middle management, right? I am now removed from every customer call. I'm not as in touch with the customers as I was. When do you start being like, oh, I wonder what's happening, disrupting with the startups behind me?
Yeah, I think the time to be worried is when you're not in tune with your customers. That's the time to be worried. It has nothing to do with competition. If you start losing deals, it's not going to look at the competition on who you're losing to. It's let's double down on understanding what our customers need and what they want. And sure, can you use competitive analysis to maybe glean some insight on what they may have noticed that you haven't? It's a great use for looking at competition. It's a great, like, why did they decide to institute that feature? Was that feature designed to solve a customer pain that we haven't identified? Or are they just adding a feature for a vanity metric? So competitive analysis should give you insight on what you're missing from your customers, not what your competition is doing better than you.
I mean, famously, Meta spent how many billions of dollars on the metaverse? and like 6 people use it. Like it's cool, but like they sort of invested all their capital into this idea of augmented reality or I guess virtual reality. And then meantime, OpenAI and all the other tech companies, they're trying to catch up on AI, but they're behind, right?
They're kind of behind. They are and they aren't. I mean, this is a whole rabbit hole that has nothing to do with competition. Llama has a really interesting position in the AI market. So I think what Mark Zuckerberg did was brilliant, and by making Llama open source. So on the Meta side, Meta is about content. They don't have good enough content to engage people in VR, because VR, if you play a VR game, it's very immersive, very exciting. If they were able to add things that help solve people pain, like for example, get me to work out while I'm playing a game, you've got me, right? That like really good, but there's no good examples of that. I'm not sweating when I take my VR headset off.
I just like to watch Netflix.
Yeah.
On a mountain. Like, did you see the Netflix viewer? That was really cool. Except for then I was like, I'm just watching Netflix. What?
Yeah, I'm just watching Netflix. Again, get VR. If you look at the competitive landscape in VR, nobody's figured it out. And a lot of money's being poured into it. A lot of billions and billions and billions is being done in it. They're still figuring out what the kicker is for that space. And it really comes down to, it's a chicken and egg problem. You need a lot of users in order to get content creators. You need to get content creators in order to get a lot of users. Like there's just a marketplace issue. When it comes to AI, Mark recognized that there's no competing necessarily in the closed source, so he opened it up. And I think he did. I actually think in some respects, Facebook is ahead of OpenAI when it comes to LLMs. Anyway, that's a rabbit hole.
I completely zoned out, and
sorry.
At no point during that rambling, I just need to have the copy of that speech of Billy Madison just pulled up. No, I award you no points. And anyway, so here's
that was good stuff, Chris. I'm sorry, but that was good stuff.
It's great content. There's nothing to do with content.
Nothing to do with this. Yeah.
It'll be good when we build our own LLM. The How to Founder LLM is going to be really.
We're going to write a word salad prompt.
Yeah, it's just going to be the most sarcastic and sort of like, maybe like dad joke LLM of all time. You want a good dad joke, it'll go strong. All right, here's one other idea I want to ask, and it is about competition, but it's about understanding markets first, which is, here is one of the dirty secrets we don't talk about as being founders, is that market matters most. You can be a freaking outstanding founder. You can have an amazing founder team. And if you enter a market that is shrinking, that's not growing, that is the dynamics, there's legal and regulation coming into it. It can be a really, really difficult place to win just because of the market dynamics. And so you as a founder, you want to find that. And we often just do this by default because technology is coming in, it's emerging, it's disrupting. So you want to look at market. But I want to ask the question, as far as competitive environment goes, the smartest thing I've ever heard about this was Perry Evans, famous Denver and Colorado founder. He says, don't just look at one industry, try to be in the middle of multiple growing industries. And then, you can figure out how to just slightly move one way or the other to be in the fastest, most interesting growing industry. That's easy to say. It's harder to do as you even just think about it as an idea. If you get sort of interested in a concept and a problem that you want to solve, how do you look at the competitive industry landscape, not necessarily just the individual competitors in that landscape?
Again, I go back to, I don't look, like if you're looking at the competitive landscape first, you're looking at the wrong thing first. Don't you think, Chris? Like, don't you think you should be, I think the way the order is out, you're out of order.
You're out of order. I'm out of order. You're out of order.
So
this whole podcast is out of order.
Shouldn't you be looking at solving a customer pain and then seeing what's out there? And And so there's could be a couple things, right? Somebody could be solving this problem and not marketing it correctly, or somebody or nobody's solving the problem, and you should decide first what's the problem. Is the problem big enough to make money at? And two, then is somebody else solving the problem, and can I compete? Sure. But maybe you don't even need to solve the problem from a feature by feature perspective. Maybe you're just better at marketing it. Maybe you're better at putting it in front of people so that they have more access to your solution. I don't know. I don't know if I'm thinking about that right, Chris.
Well, I think you are, but the piece where I get to is first of all, and I'm just going to go backwards for a second. If you don't have any competitors, your idea is stupid. Like if you come in and be like, look, there's not a single competitor. Like I'm doing something entirely unique. There's no market for this. There is no such thing as entirely unique idea in our world. Like you might be taking a slightly different approach, or you might have a different set of core competencies or things that you think you can do this better. But I have heard things where it's like, we have zero competitors. I'm like, really? If you have zero competitors, you cannot find a single person that's interested in solving this problem, then probably it's not a big enough problem.
So think of competition this way. So that's not true, right? So there's no circumstance where you have no competition. You do have so think of competition in this way. You're competing for dollars, not on solutions. There's nobody else solving this problem in this way. Therefore, I have no competition is the wrong way to think about it. You're having to take dollars from somebody else so that your customers pay you for it instead of somebody else. That instead of somebody else is your competition. If you're selling hot dogs, your competition is hamburgers.
Right.
So think of it from that perspective. Who's not going to win a sale because I just won a sale? That's your competition.
Guy Kawasaki famously says, "Who has my money in their pocket?"
Right.
It's a way to think about it. But the reality is that the way you just described that is businesses and individuals, depending on where you're doing, they don't have infinite resources. You have to believe that you're competing for a finite dollar, and you have to add more value than some other product that they're currently paying for.
Totally agree.
Okay. So there's one other piece here. So if you are there, you do have competition, even if you're doing something entirely novel, you're bringing these two concepts together, or there's this emerging technology that does not, that now is going to be there. You still have to figure out a way to do that. And, sort of the build it and they will come things we used to do in the 2000s, 2010s doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, maybe it will again in the future with, the next VC-led bubble that's going to happen. But for now, I want us to think through just this other thing, which is, all right, if I believe in the Perry Evans thesis here, which is I need to be in the middle of interesting markets, how do none of us work, for the big market analysis things, and we don't want to pay the $100,000 it takes to get the report that shows the market size. And by the way, every one of those things shows it's going to be $1 billion market in 3 years anyway, right? How do you think about market analysis in this way? Do you just sort of feel through it, or do you go look for data? Like what's your
Chris? I want to ask you a question first. So,
sure.
Are you sure that's the right way to look at it? Adjacent markets. Are you certain? I think that applies for some companies, especially in the startup world, but not everybody that listens to this show. I think a lot of founders are starting companies that are squarely like an HVAC company. Like if you're a plumber and you're starting a plumbing service in your town, you're just looking at other plumbers in your area, right? Like you're not looking at adjacent markets necessarily, especially as you're starting out. So I don't think that applies. I would say
disagree.
to most.
I disagree.
Entrepreneurs.
Here's the reason why.
Okay.
which is, okay, let's say that you come out of trade school and you have the ability to be a plumber, you have the ability to be an electrician, right? And in the electrician, one of the things that you have to do is in plumbing, like, look, it's a huge market, right? But one of the things that I would ask is that if you're going out and making that decision to be a plumber and electrician, is how many, like, who exists competitively in your market?
I agree.
So look at just the competitors. Like, are there more electricians? And, that's not hard. You just Google, the old Yellow Pages thing, even though it's not a real thing anymore. That shows my age. The second piece then is there going to be anything that happens in the future that is going to grow or shrink the demand of your services? So in this case, plumbing, maybe if you're in an older town and plumbing, like, you're kind of not a lot of new building, but there's a lot of old buildings, and okay, maybe that might incrementally shift. But if you're an electrician and you know that your town has just mandated solar energy and every house needs to have solar energy, and that you could be the person that wires for solar energy, that is going to be a faster growing market, which means there's going to be less pricing demand. So you're not going to be competing quite as hard on the dollars in a market that's just got more demand than there is supply. And so I think it is important that you analyze that and look at the macro factors and look at the big winds of change. Is it going to make a huge difference if you're the best plumber in your town? Like, you're still going to be the best plumber in your town. Like, you can still compete on that in that area, but just understanding what's happening in the world, I think, does matter.
Well, yeah, so yes, and because it might just be that in your town for the service or the products that you're offering, that it's harder to buy from everybody else than you. Like, you've made it easier to buy.
Right. You just figured out a way for somebody to text you and schedule. Like, great.
Yeah. Or you have more awareness. You figured out a unique marketing tack, like sticking yard signs in at the corner of the busiest intersection, or whatever it is. You can out hustle in a commoditized market and crush it. So
Absolutely.
I don't, or just outthink it. It doesn't need, you don't need to maybe work more hours just to outthink it. So I think it's all of those things. Like, you don't have to be entering a market that's unobvious, in order to build a really good business around it.
But now we're back
again, we're getting into competition, right?
Yeah, but this is exactly right. So in this case, you want to be aware what your competition is doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You want to know what your competition is missing.
Yeah. What are the opportunities? What are the gaps?
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because this is a universal truth, whether or not you're trying to start a high, VC-backed startup. It's, what are the gaps that exist? What are the opportunities that exist within the market? And to your point, it's always about pain, right? What pain exists and what pain can you solve? And the more acute the pain, the better the company's going to be. But also understanding, okay, the pain here, yes, the number one pain is that you've got a clog, and it's, oh my gosh, more emojis. The pain is that you have a clogged toilet, but the real pain is I don't actually want to call and talk to you.
Right.
I want to just be able to text you and schedule.
Right.
That's an
exactly
interesting
right.
pain point. Yeah. All right. So where have we landed here? We've talked around it, but I think that we've made a case here that it's not about individual competition. At least in my case, I think that you do need to be aware about market dynamics. Like, kind of start to wrap this up if you can.
Actually, Chris, we're gonna flip scripts. We're gonna flip roles here. First of all, I want to give you the speed round, and I want you to wrap this up.
Oh my God. Okay, Anthony.
You're good at this. You're good at this. All right, you ready? So first, here we go. We're gonna go with the speed round.
All right.
All right, Chris, are you ready for the speed round?
Well, I just want to comment. You hit your mark when you're doing the speed round. When I'm doing the speed round.
Yeah, you're right. It's easier for me to hit the mark.
All right. Well done. Well done.
All right, here we go. All right, so speed round for you, Chris. Monitor customer churn or competitor features?
Neither.
Yeah. Track. All right. Track market share or customer satisfaction?
Yes, track market share is a good way to start to look at market analysis.
Okay. Okay. Over customer satisfaction. Watch direct competitors or adjacent markets?
I think in this particular case, we've made the case that adjacent markets are smarter.
I disagree. Analyze DOS deals.
It's my speed round, Anthony. You don't get to have an opinion.
You're right. You're right. I apologize. You're still wrong. Analyze lost deals or won deals?
Both.
Survey churned customers or active users?
Both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Both.
You're
Be
right.
brave. Go talk.
All right,
to
Chris.
people
Why
that
don't
hate
you wrap it up for us today?
Oh gosh, I don't know. We've wandered a lot, but I think that the interesting piece here is I'm going to say there's 3 levels to what we learned today. The first one is when you start, being obsessed with competitors is actually a detriment. Really take that focus and be obsessed with what your customer needs and wants are. Don't be as obsessed with your bigger market leaders. Just look for the opportunities that are emerging within the market. Look to see how they're reacting, but don't be worried because, again, they're going to be very slow to execute. And you can build a great company in the time it takes them to execute. Number 3, I would say, and this was where we got, I think, kind of this interesting conversation, is that, yes, be aware of the competitive landscape within an industry, within your market, and look for the gaps and opportunities that exist within that. And how do you want to compete? And then be aware of the overall market forces that are happening. What's the legislation? What's the regulation? Just be aware of that. But again, it should not be an obsession. You should just go out and be obsessed with serving your customer and solving a problem. I'm sure I missed a couple, Anthony. What else do you have?
No, I think those are good. Just it's better to obsess over customers than competition, and use competitive analysis more about what are you missing versus insights into what you may be missing, but not what you should be doing.
Also, if you believe you don't have any competitors, A, you're wrong, and B, you're dumb. Like, that's your business idea is dumb.
You have competition for dollars. You
right.
Always
Don't say that you don't have any competition, because if you do, you're very likely in a very terrible market, because nobody else wants to compete for those dollars.
All right, Chris, where can we go to learn more about the topic?
There's some good deep dive recommendation. Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen. We haven't mentioned the late great Clayton Christensen for a really long time. He actually does a really interesting, you can find it on YouTube, about the job to be done. That's kind of adjacent to this and this question as well. The Paranoid Survive by Andrew Grove. I've not read that, but I do know Andy Grove, he's one of the all-time great entrepreneurs and operators. And The Strategy Paradox by Michael Raynor. That's one that I'd like to kind of read. I think that's about it, Anthony. What do we have coming up? What are you excited about? Are you now like, God, I got to make sure that we schedule guests every single episode, because this has been a train wreck in slow motion.
I was very happy to just be you and I for a little bit, Chris. I did enjoy. I really think. Thank you for doing this with me.
It's great. It's the dynamics of this is all the same, which is for people that just tune in, which is that you and I, genuinely love you. Well, at least I love you. I think you love me, but we don't agree on much, which is great. Which is what makes this interesting. Is that,
well, I mean, it'd help more if you were right more, but all right. So for everybody listening, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting the podcast. We're getting a tremendous outpouring of support, so really appreciate that. For those of you that haven't, visit us at howtofounder.com and follow us on any of your favorite podcast channels right there. And for Chris, I will mention it one more time. Please leave us a good review on Apple Podcasts. It's hurting his feelings that we're not yet at a 4.8. We're getting there. For all of you that have voted, kudos to you, and we're sending you a great How to Founder t-shirt. We are. No, we're not. that would actually be against the law to
With our unlimited how to fund a budget.
No, but again, thank you so much for tuning in. And next time we're going to be talking to Jamal Ford on building prioritization techniques. So we're going to look at the Eisenhower matrix. Until then, thank you guys. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.